Hey guys, today we're going to be playing with studio lighting with food photography at home. Now, this is a beginner's look at food photography using artificial light and studio strobes, and it's something that we could do at home. Now, if that's something you're interested in, stick around. I got some good tips for you. Let's get into it. All right, artificial lighting, food photography. We have a couple of options here. You have your studio strobes, like I've got here, or you have a constant light. LED, whatever. You have those two. I tend to use studio strobes like this one here. Now, this is a brand I use. It's an Alien Bee made by Paul Buff. I've been using them for years. If you check out their site, I know I'm not sponsored by them, they have a lot of different options that are available beyond the Alien Bee series now. They got the Digby and they've got a few others, the Einsteins, I think. It's something to look at. This one here is about $300 US. It was a little more, but newer models have come out, so it's decreased in price. As I say, I've been using them for years. They work perfect for me. They're about a mid-level studio strobe. There is tons out there, from the high-end professional to very, very cheap knockoff type stuff. It's something that you have to decide what you want to do in that regard. I personally love the Alien Bees, and I know a lot of my photography friends use them, and they come in a bunch of different powers. So if you don't want to invest that much, then you could go with something like this, which is off-camera flash. Now, this is the Nikon SB600. If you don't want to get a name brand, there are third-party off-camera flashes or camera flashes available for you. I use this little piece on the bottom. It's called a peanut slave. So when my studio light goes off, it hits this sensor and it triggers a flash. That way I don't have to worry about trying to sync in camera this strobe with this. I just let this do the talking with my camera and it just triggers this flash, and I can just manually adjust the power setting. So this is a cheaper option, but you can use in conjunction with your studio lighting, but you can use it as a standalone as well. Now, you may be wondering, why the studio lighting and not natural light? I love natural light photography. The problem I have is within my studio, I don't have that available to me. Now, one of the advantages I have with the studio strobes is I can shoot whenever I want, wherever I want. It doesn't matter if it's raining, it doesn't matter if it's nighttime, because my light source is here and I can shoot indoors, so I don't have to worry about the weather. And with the natural light, I have to do my setup around the natural light and try and modify the natural light. Whereas studio strobes, I have more creativity. I can move the light around where I can't with natural light. I have to move my setting around the natural light. Here, I can move my lighting around my setup, which works perfectly. Gives me a little more creative freedom. I'm really happy using these studio strobes. Now, let's whip up some tasty treats and get down into the studio and check it out. Here's our little setup here. We've got these tasty orange cream cupcakes. I can't wait to tuck into one of them. Now, before we get into all of this setup, I've got a companion video that kind of goes with this. I'll put a link to it down below. Basically, it talks about the size of the light and how it creates a hard light. It talks about shooting light through a diffuser panel and the distance the light is from that. And it talks about the distance from it, how the shadows shorten or lengthen, and there's examples of all that. So it's kind of a companion one to go along with this one. Now, the other thing with that, the height of your light and the distance, again, from your subject. The direction, in this case, controls the contrast and texture and a bit of shaping. So it's mainly your shaping and your texture from your direction. The height of the light will shorten or lengthen shadows, and it will increase or decrease contrast within the image. So those are other things you need to be aware of. Now, in this lighting setup, and I'm going to do two for you, a side light and a backlight. 90-degree light coming this way. My camera is pointed this way. My subject, these lovely cupcakes, are 90 degrees to it. This is a studio light, just like I showed you before, but this is a black one. It's the same as the other, and it's in a 46-inch octabox. The octabox has two layers of diffusion. There's an inner baffle that the light goes through, spreads wider, then it hits this other outer one before it comes to the subject, so it creates that nice soft lighting. Now, side lighting creates texture. Because the light is coming this way, all the nice little grooves on the cupcakes on this side get a lot of shadowing in all those little grooves, and it really makes that texture just pop right out. If you front lit this, the cupcakes look very flat. When you side light, you get some shaping, almost three-dimensional coming around, and it really increases that texture when you side light. So I've got everything set up, everything the way I want. I've got the light a little higher and tipped down a bit because on the top of the oranges here and on the front, because the oranges are a bit moist, even on the icing, you will get what's called specular highlighting, and it looks like this. You can see the little sparkles that are on that. That is specular highlighting, and it kicks up your image an extra notch, and it makes it a little more mouth-watering that you want to have a taste of that sparkly, tasty treat. Now on here, I've got everything set up. I've already got my focus locked. I just simply come along and I've got my picture. So you can see on the side lighting how I've got that lovely texture coming in on that because of the light hitting here, lighter, darker. I've shown in multiple videos, if this side is too dark, simply use a piece of foam core with a clamp, stand it there, take your picture. The light will come from here, hit that, bounce back, but only a percentage of the light, so it's not even. If both sides were evenly lit, we would again start talking about flat images again. So this does not produce the same as that. It only bounces a portion of it back. Now, in my case, I have a small studio wall right here. It's reflecting light from the studio light, and it's wrapping around. If I need to control it a bit more, black foam core and do what they call negative fill. And I've shown this in multiple videos too. And I would just simply stand it beside, and I can deepen those shadows out, especially if I'm doing a dark and moodier type shot, or in this case, if it's just bouncing too much around because it's fairly all white. Black will help with that. So that is your side lighting. Now let me just flip this around, and we're going to do the same setup. I'm not changing anything other than the direction that we're shooting. So the light's staying where it is, the power of the light staying where it is, and I'm simply going to move house this way. So now I'm simply going to turn everything this way. The subject is now in front of the light with the light source coming behind. So the light is going to be strongest at the back, weakest at the front. Now, whenever you're shooting this way, you need to fill the front because the front will always be underexposed. If you expose for the front, the background will be dramatically overexposed. Now, with this being backlit, I get the glow through the segments of orange. Look at the glow difference here of that piece of orange. You can see how the light reflects, and so anything translucent like that, drinks work wonderful because you're going to shine your light through it and really pull out and enhance that color and everything else with it. So on here, I'm just simply bringing my light and my camera in this way and getting everything wonderfully set. Now, I need fill light. Again, I have the option of using a piece of foam core to bounce back in. If it's not enough light and your budget is so that you have more than one studio light, let me just run off here. I could use a strip box, any other light source, to kick some light in on the front of these cupcakes, especially down at the bottom, because I'm going to get a heavier shadowing. Now, I will, as I say, get reflection back off the wall, but it's not really going to come into the front. So you have the option. If you have two studio strobes, one at the back, one at the front, make sure that the one at the front is decreased because you only want to fill the shadows, you don't want to kill them. Or if you only have one studio light, piece of foam core again, bounce some light back in. And do you remember the off-camera flash I showed? This is a good opportunity for that. Just got to shoot it through a diffuser panel of some sort, even a bed sheet in that case, just to diffuse that light out, just to fill in a front of that shadow. So that's basically it. A lot of people get intimidated by studio lighting when you don't need to be. And you're going to go, well, what was your camera settings? The camera settings, and I always see people asking about that, it doesn't really matter because it's subjective to that shoot. The room you're in, the size of the room, the color of the wall, everything. will determine your lighting setup and what you're using. On here, I always start and leave my film speed ISO 100. This little piece on top of the camera is a trigger to go with the back of the unit on the studio strobe to fire the flash wirelessly. I set it at 160 for shutter speed. Above that, and it won't sync right, and I'll get black within the image because of the curtain showing. So I've already set the ISO at 100, and I've shut my shutter speed at 160. Now, I only have one thing left to play with for the creative process, and that is the aperture. 1.2, 2.8, very shallow, very narrow depth of field, especially with the lens I have on here, which is a Tamron 90mm. That's zooming in pretty good, and a 1. or 2.8 really creates a shallow depth of field. So I tend to go a little higher and then bump up the power of my lights. You can definitely get to the point where you're trying to shoot at, say, f20 on here, and your light is not powerful enough to light it. You have two choices. At that point, decrease your aperture, or you're going to have to increase your film speed to compensate for it. Again, you can't really adjust the ISO or the shutter speed, sorry, and the shutter speed with studio lighting doesn't really matter because the short duration of this, it's filling the light immediately. And with that, you have to be careful of ambient light. Ambient light, even though you're using studio light, can still sneak in on you. So once you get your exposure set, turn your studio light off, take a picture, have a look at it. Is it black? Do you have ambient light leaking in anywhere? So you're trying to figure out what's going on with the picture where there's other lights coming from. Turn off your lights, take a picture. It might be the window light right beside you is powerful enough that it's actually showing up in with studio strobe, because the sun is stronger than the studio strobe. All right, so there's some tips and tricks for you. I'm going to get into these tasty little treats. Have any questions? Please leave it in the comment section down below. Don't forget to check that other video out. It goes hand in hand with this. This one was basically about the 90-degree side lighting and about the backlighting and how the height and the distance changes contrast, texture, shape, and your shadows. So that's it for this one. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. So until the next time.